The Delhi airport is a nightmare right now. If you're catching a domestic flight, you must arrive at least 3.5 hours in advance. And within Delhi, Terminal 3 seems to be the worst. Take a look at these pictures posted by some passengers. The lines are so long, you cannot make out where it starts or ends. Dozens of people have missed their flights because of these long queues. Many of them also blamed the airport authorities and the government for these bottlenecks. So earlier today, Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia took matters into his own hands. He arrived at T3, that's Terminal 3, for a surprise check, met with senior officials and reviewed the operations. A couple of new measures have been announced to now decongest T3. Peak hour flights have been reduced. Some of them have been shifted to Terminal 2 and Terminal 1. Passengers will now be able to get live updates on their waiting time on social media. Plus, 4 additional gates will be opened to accommodate more people. Let's first listen in to what the minister had to say after his inspection.
हमने सारे स्टेक होल्डर्स के साथ मीटिंग रखी एयरपोर्ट के अंदर ही, जिसमें बीकैस, सीआईएसएफ, डीजीसीए, हमारे सारे एयरलाइंस के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स, हमारे एयरपोर्ट के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स सब साथ में थे और हमने मिलकर ये निर्णय लिया है और निर्देश मैंने दिए हैं कि हर गेट के ऊपर एक बोर्ड लगना चाहिए। वो बोर्ड बताना चाहिए कि हर गेट पे वेटिंग टाइम क्या है। तो उदाहरण के तौर पर अगर एक यात्री गेट नंबर 1 पे उतरा है और उसे बोर्ड से मालूम पड़ता है कि गेट नंबर 12 पे वेटिंग टाइम सबसे कम है, वो झट करके गेट नंबर 12 पे जाएगा और ये क्लॉगिंग नहीं होगा।
And I'm joined now by Ishika, my colleague who's joining me live from outside the Delhi airport. Dharani is joining me from the Chennai airport because this is becoming more and more an urban phenomenon. Now, a quick background and context before we go to Ishika and Dharani. Passenger flying rates are nearly back to pre-COVID levels, to 2019. And that is why now a surge of passengers at these airports. My question is that why is there suddenly a lack of capacity at these airports? I've got Dharani with me. I can see her on screen outside the Chennai airport. Dharani, good evening. How are you doing? Tell me, what is happening in Chennai? Are there long queues as well as passengers once again take to flying?
Well, right now I'm standing, in the domestic arrival, portion in the Chennai airport. In fact, to be precise, I'm standing near exit gate number A2. Yeah. So you can, see in the visuals the crowd that is standing here, and there is no proper, structural organization here. The crowds is standing, here and there, and there is no proper queue itself here in the first place. So, every time we come to the Chennai airport, especially to this a particular domestic arrival portion, this, scene, it keeps repeating. We could see the passengers are coming outside, without any proper queue, and those who are waiting to pick up their friends and relatives, they're also standing here and there, in a crowded manner without any proper organizational structure. So, in fact, a couple of, 2-3 days before also we did a live from the same location, that is exit gate number A2, and, at that time the crowd was even more, larger than what it is right now. So, definitely, this congestion, it has become a huge issue not only in the Mumbai and Delhi airports, but also in Chennai airport. And there's also an important point talking about Chennai. So we all know that the Tamil Nadu government is trying to establish a second airport for Chennai in Parandur. So that plan is, in the papers now, and they're also trying to acquire the land from public to establish the second airport. So one of the main reasons that are being cited for the need for a second airport is that the first airport, I mean the one and only airport that is in Chennai right now, this airport is not able to contain the population that is coming in and going out. So the population control is kind of become a worrisome issue here in the Chennai airport, and that is the primary reason why the government has planned to establish a second airport for Chennai in Parandur. So definitely this issue needs to be addressed, and since this has become the talk of the country now, I think the congestion in Chennai airport will also be coming.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Dharani, because that's giving us some perspective. We spoke about Delhi. Chennai is also congested, and Delhi is also seeing those kinds of congestion. Like I said, it's great news. It's great news for the economy. It's great news for airlines that the flyers are back. After 2 years, Now, people have started flying again after COVID-19. Now, let me talk a bit about T3. T3 is one of the busiest terminals in the entire country. It was opened in 2010 and can handle around 40 million passengers. That's around 4 crore people annually. This terminal operates around 500 domestic flights and 250 international flights. So put together, that's more than 750 flights per day. The daily passenger load is around 1.9 lakhs. But as we have seen, the terminal is not able to handle that many people. So the authorities have made 2 broad changes to decongest the airport. The first is to ask passengers to arrive a lot earlier than before. The second is to reduce the number of flights. The hourly flight count has been lowered from 22 to 19. Many of these flights have been shifted to Terminal 2 and Terminal 1. But most of these decisions are coming too late, because the fact is our airports should have been ready for this deluge of passengers. Let me take you back to 2020, the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic. Most flights had been grounded by lockdown, so air travel reduced considerably. Take a look at the data, in fact. In 2019, India reported more than 14 crore passengers across the year. That's around 4 lakh passengers every single day. But in 2020, those numbers dropped drastically, from 14 crore passengers to just 6 crore passengers in 2020. Now, this translates to about 1.7 lakh travelers a day. But 2 years later, things are a lot better. In 2021, India logged more than 8.3 crore passengers, which is 2.2 lakhs per day. And this year, things have improved further. By late November, the daily passenger count reached 4 lakhs again, meaning India's air traffic has returned to pre-pandemic levels. And that's important to note, because this level of air travel is not unprecedented in our country. It's not like it's happening for the first time. 4 lakh passengers used to travel in 2019, and 4 lakh passengers are traveling today. So why are the airports not able to handle it? One reason could be the trimmed down workforce. During the pandemic years, India's aviation sector lost around 39,000 employees. This includes at airports, airlines, ground handling firms and cargo companies. Out of this, around 19,000 people were let go from airports alone. The question is, were these people hired back in the last year? If not, the problem is obvious. Our air traffic has returned to pre-pandemic levels, but the workforce has not. That's problem number one. The other problem is capacity. A CRISIL report from 2020 said that India's major airports are operating at 130% capacity. So assume that the airport can handle 100 people, but it's handling 130 instead. That's how crowded things are. If you add these 2 factors, you will understand why Indian airports are crowded. Having said this, there shouldn't be a surprise for the government and airport authorities. They should see the passenger surge building up. They were planning for it, yet chose to do nothing about it. To speak more on this, I'm joined now by Jitendra Bhargav, former ED of Air India. Ajay Attorney, editor live from alounge.com, is with me this evening. Captain Amit Singh, founder Safety Matters Foundation, is joining us, and Air Commodore B.S. Siwach, retired DG Aviation Safety Management, with us on the show. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us, Air Commodore Siwach. Let me come to you first to understand what has suddenly gone wrong. Do you think our assessment is apt? That is essentially all the people who were sacked or lost their jobs during COVID pandemic have not been called back. It's clearly a lack of planning.
Thanks, Tamana, for inviting me. You're absolutely right. A large number of people were laid off during the pandemic, and now new people have been inducted, but their training has been rushed through, and they're not really fully trained, fully knowledgeable, fully aware, and fully competent. And the work culture of our people at the airport, their attitudes, their involvement, their supervision, their monitoring, and the attitude of our security staff, immigration staff, definitely needs a lot of improvement. And if the authorities, the management is not involved, then you get into this kind of problem. Now this news has been, going around for quite some time, and everyone seemed to be sleeping. Now suddenly the matter reached the higher authorities, and the Ministry of Civil Aviation himself had to rush to the airport to find out the solutions. Now, that's not the right approach. We have to be proactive. The management at the airport should have known about this problem, should have been monitoring it, should have been supervising it, they should have been involved, and they would have taken various measures to ensure that this kind of chaos does not take place at a very prestigious airport like Delhi Airport, which has bagged so many awards over a period of time.
True.
So it is the lack of involvement of the management, oversight from the Ministry of Civil Aviation also can be called, because Ministry of Civil Aviation is only rushing to the airport after it has been making news for quite some time.
No, so what has
So that
changed?
is very
What has
even-
changed it? This is the power of social media. This is the power
No,
of social
absolutely.
media. VIPs go through the Delhi airport. If it was some other city which is perhaps going through the same thing, it wouldn't have had that much attention. The Jitendra Bhargav, VIPs go through the T3 airport. They're the ones upset at standing in line. Maybe we have VIP culture to thank for this. As a result, maybe other ordinary passengers will also get some benefit. I can't hear you, sir. I think you're on mute.
It's not really because of the VVIPs. One picture of the long queues outside the terminal building or the security is enough to indicate that there's a problem on hand. And I will put my comment based on my own experience on 8th while traveling from Delhi to Mumbai. The outside, all the gates have big queues. A security guard saying, please go to gate number 7, when gate number 3 was the most convenient for me to get into the nearest airline counter that I was traveling by. Now that's only 10 minutes. But the bigger issue is at the security. And why is it so? I don't think that's been addressed so far. Pre-COVID, if I had a stroller bag, I could lift it and put it on the X-ray belt and it could go through. Now we have a tray system. Each passenger uses no less than 3 trays. One for his handbag, if he's carrying only one handbag and not more than one. Then you have your mobile phone and iPad that you are keeping. And because it's winter season, the third tray is being used for the jacket that you take off and the belt that you keep. Now imagine when each passenger is using 3 trays, the time that it takes. It took me 50 minutes for me to reach from the end of the queue to the first place by following the rules and regulations, and there were disruptions.
No, but Mr. Bhargav, I'm not understanding what is different from other airports.
No,
where there are
simple,
cold
because-
places where
no,
you
Tamanna,
also need that many trays.
In no other airport do all passengers wear a jacket because it isn't as cold as it is here. And Delhi certainly has a bigger airport with more people traveling. There's no denying this fact. But there is security. So when you add manpower to it, can you get trained manpower who will scan the baggages immediately? Can you add X-ray machines immediately? The simple solution are twofold. Number one, rigorously follow the one handbag, one passenger rule so that the burden for the security scanning is reduced. Second, make airlines say, okay, we allow 15 kilograms of baggage. For this temporary period, we will allow handbags, because when people travel with multiple handbags, it is again creating congestion at the security. That we will, for this period, like a lot of American carriers do it, that they will take the handbag and say, okay, we'll take a treatless checked-in passenger, but not charge you for it. Now, there are some kind of solutions that need to be found to tide over this crisis.
Right.
Otherwise, it will only snowball as we get into the Christmas time, the New Year time, and more people travel.
So it's
And as you very rightly said, it's very good news for the airlines.
exactly.
that
It's
the
catch
passengers are back
22.
to traveling.
It's catch 22. The airlines should be happy. The economy is doing well. But now one of your solutions is to reduce the number of daily flights and reduce the number of flights in peak period.
Tamanna, that is not the solution. The fact is you need to add more flights.
But
Otherwise, the fares
it is one of the proposals. It is
fares
one of,
will go up for the passengers. Imagine how much the fares are
exactly.
averaging
Let me
high,
come to
they'll
Ajay
go
on
still
this.
higher.
Let me come to Ajay exactly on this point. This is the time for airlines to show some recovery. Passengers want more options at peak periods. That's why you have rush in the morning. That's why you have rush at certain times of the day. Is reducing flights or shifting them to other terminals? The answer, and like we showed you from our report in Chennai, it's not only about Delhi.
Hi, Tamanna. Basically, I think there are quite a few things that have gone wrong at Delhi and will go wrong at other airports as well. One of the key reasons which I think things are moving slowly now is this whole initiative with respect to private security being allowed at airports. So I think last year, CISF was permitted to only take the core security functions, and other things were given away to private security contractors like queue management and so on. Now, the trouble is, during peak periods, a lot of novice travelers or not very frequent flyers are flying as well. And all these people are not familiar with the rules, with the way things work. And this private security is also still very new. So they don't have they're themselves not clear about a lot of the issues that they have to handle. And that's one reason why things are moving slowly, because they're not able to control passengers. Number two, I think, the automatic tray retrieval system, which is not just Delhi, other airports have moved to it as well. But this is a global solution, But, what Mr. Bhargav says is completely correct. People are using 3 trays. People are fighting over trays at the airport. The solution is not to go back to the old system, as some people think, but to manage that tray better. The security forces ask people to put keep your laptop separately in a different tray, put your bag in a separate tray, put your key rings and everything in a separate tray, and then a lot of these things then go into a secondary check, as it is called, as well. So I think the tolerance, for scanning more things in one tray needs to be done.
Right. Let's get practical. Let's get practical as well from the point of what the airline can do. But I want to talk about the bigger picture, Captain Amit Singh, which we haven't actually managed to address or answer correctly. Like I said in my comments, that we are used to these many passengers. We're just about coming back to pre-COVID levels. So what has changed? The airport is the same. The capacity is the same. If anything, we will be adding more capacity. Why the crunch now?
Well, the crunch was seen well before. That is why the second airport was planned, Jewar Airport. And that too is running behind schedule. I believe the opening of the first runway and the terminal is scheduled around 2025. So in 2019, when the project was launched, Delhi Airport was had already crossed the capacity mark, which means that COVID was a respite, basically, when things could have been worked out or improvements could have been done. But nothing was done during that time for various reasons. Now, when people have started traveling, we have reached a tipping point right now, which means 6 to 8 months back, we had seen the trends. People have started complaining over social media. Around March and July, the full body scanning system was put on trial, very well knowing that there would be a crunch month in December when it would be a peak travel time. So everybody knew about it, but nothing was done. Why was the airport operator not involved or engaged in upgrading the security systems? For example, we have something called a CT scanning system, which is a 3D scanner, which is used in a lot of airports around the world, Copenhagen, a lot of Middle East airports and American airports. You don't need to take out any electronics, no liquids, just put your bag in and walk through. So that is used to cut basically queue time significantly. So why haven't we upgraded to those levels? Somebody needs to ask the question. When a passenger checks in, now check-in online is mandatory.
Right.
So we have an online boarding card. We have a facility of self-tagging. I traveled the other day from Delhi. I did the self-check-in and self-tagging. I put the tag on my bag and we went to the drop-off area. But the drop-off area is the same. you need to get into the same queue, whether you have got a self tag or not.
So what's
and
the point?
You get a new boarding card. So the whole process is repeated. So the system is not at all efficient. So we are duplicating the systems. Then you have fights over trays and all, which means the tray retrieval system is either not there. In the international side, it is not there. There are some tray retrieval systems on the domestic side. So nobody has a bird's eye view of what's happening. We might solve Delhi's problem. Something would erupt in Bangalore or somewhere else or in Bombay. So who is controlling the whole system or has a bird's eye
No,
view?
so who is supposed to be?
Airports
That's a
like
good question.
Calicut,
so who
small
is
airports
supposed to
like
do
Calicut
it?
have systems.
Captain Singh, isn't it the DGCA? Or is it the Airport Authorities of India? Because a lot of these airports are now privatized. The airport operators are privatized. So where does the buck stop? Is it with the Civil Aviation Ministry? Eventually, who fixes this?
It is with the Civil Aviation Ministry because the international regulator, the ICAO, has something called a facilitation, annex on facilitation, passenger facilitation, be it security or immigration. So let's take an example of immigration. There are systems like Advanced Passenger Information System, APIS, which means when a flight departs from a foreign destination to India, within 15 minutes, the authorities have to transmit to the Indian immigration authorities all the passenger names and the details, so that when the passenger arrives, the immigration authorities are prepared to basically decide who all can pass through with minimum level of scrutiny or who requires more scrutiny, rather than treating everybody in the same manner. So other systems like pre-departure clearance, which a lot of Middle East airports have, that okay to board, that you will not be given a boarding card unless the immigration clears your name, which means that when you arrive, you pass through. Clearance for foreigners and Indian nationals, so that is implemented. So other things like e-gates are in the process of implementation, but we are a lot behind, an year and a half behind of what's happening. It's similar to what happens on the roads, that when a flyover is built, we are already over capacity. So somebody needs to plan advance and keep a track of what's happening.
Are we in line now, Mr. Bhargav? Second airports are opening. There's a new airport which has been inaugurated, for example, in Goa. And this question for Jitendra Bhargav. Airports in smaller hubs, tier 2 cities are gaining speed, but are they just not keeping up with the number of flyers?
We need to applaud certain things, that this is the first time when a second airport is going to come in a city, the first airport will still be functional. In Hyderabad, when the new airport started, the old one was shut down. Likewise in Bangalore. Now, this is the first time in two airports are going to work, and this is what we need because market is growing and the market has rebounded at a pace which nobody had expected, which is very welcome news. And the fact that we were stuck between 3.3 lakh passengers a day to 3.7 lakh passengers a day for a considerably long period. And then we suddenly see a surge. Well, one can say airports are at fault, BCA should have been streamlining the system, DGCA should have foreseen, Ministry of Foreseen. But the reality is, if only there is better discipline, as I said earlier, just look at the visuals and see how many handbags are being carried. And the constraint at the airport at the moment, as I said out of my own experience, is the security at the moment. It is taking 50 to 55 minutes to an hour to get from the...
But is that a problem of short staff? Private sector coming in?
No, Tamanna, I identified the problem. If each one is going to take 3 trays, take out his jacket, then put it there. Earlier, we used to allow our phones to be put in a jacket and it will go through the security. Okay. But now they want it kept separately. So there are certain regulatory changes that have been brought about. Okay. Besides the fact that the tray concept...
So those perhaps, looking at safety need to be eased up.
The fact is you can't compromise safety. But if I travel in USA and I can have my iPad in my hand baggage and it can go through the security, there is no reason why I must put it separately on a separate tray in India. And this is all leading to inefficient use, taking longer for passengers to go through the security and thus delaying flights, creating chaos everywhere. And that is the only bottleneck that we have besides the entry gate at Delhi airport.
I want to go to a point that Ajay made, where he talked about a lot of first-time flyers who don't know the system, pre-check-in, etc. But Ajay, just listen to what Captain Singh had said. Even if you go through that whole system, it's no use. You have to once again stand in the line. And plus, when you have a market that is still largely untapped, you are trying to bring in more first-time flyers. Isn't the onus on the authorities, on the airlines, on the ministry to make it easier, not penalize someone because they don't know all the rules? We're still a fledgling aviation market in that sense.
See, Tamila, one of the things that I've been asking for a very long time is some sort of a trusted traveler system where people who are doing 20, 30, 40, 50 flights a year, they get into a separate queue, which, where they don't have to bring out their iPads or their, you go through a scrutiny once. This is how the US does it. For example, they give you something called the TSA pre-check, where you pass scrutiny once from the federal government, the US government, and then they allow you to join separate queues where you don't have to remove your bags and everything out from your bag. And the security theater basically needs to change for certain passengers, and there needs to be better segregation that needs to happen. So yes, people can take time, but you need, this, one of the problems right now is that airlines are now telling people to come 3 hours prior. So which means in the same physical area, which can handle X people, you're having X and a half number of people because, you just don't want to miss your flight. So it's not the solution. It's adding more people to the problem. It's not creating a solution really in my book. But this trusted traveler program, which by the way, on the international side means, you just let Indians come back in, just show your face to a camera and you're let into the country and so on. So why do I need to wait 1 hour and 1.5 hours just to get to the front of the immigration queue to say, hey, I'm an Indian citizen and I'm back in the country? So those kind of things need to be taken. I think a lot of the security establishment really needs to take a relook. They need to automate a lot of things. And obviously, security should not be compromised, but it needs to be digitized or automated, I guess. And that is where a lot of things will start moving quickly.
Well,
eventually, we have to do it.
I hope there will be focus on it. And like I said, if there's a problem in Delhi where all the VVIPs have to come in and wait in long queues, hopefully there will be quicker action and it will help people in airports all across the country. Let's hope we see that sooner rather than later. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the big story this evening on the Urban Debate. I'll take a very short break, but on the other side, my colleague Madhav spoke exclusively to Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav. Stay tuned for details of that interview.